Okay, so in the last few weeks and months, there has been a fair amount of articles, hit pieces, and video essays which can be viewed as very anti-crypto, anti-Web3, and anti-NFT. Now, these have been, trending on Reddit and YouTube, for example, which is very ironic that Web2 platforms are basically promoting content which is anti-Web3, but obviously they benefit from that. Now, this obviously includes the infamous Medium article, which basically caused ArtStation to pull out from the NFT project, which had a lot of misinformation, and I did contact Pipkin to maybe correct these things. She outright blocked me on Twitter. Then there was the video on January by Folding Ideas regarding NFTs, which already has over 7 million views, and I also contacted him for a debate or discussion. He has ghosted me ever since then. And then we have the most recent piece by Münecat, which came out roughly a month ago, which I'm gonna be talking about here today. And once again, I did contact her as well, but no reply whatsoever. And obviously, the invitation for debates is still open. I rather want to talk about these things with people 101 than, do a video in my own echo chamber about their echo chamber. It doesn't make any sense. These ideas are meant to be discussed together because that's how it's beneficial for all the people. But let's get started. So the first thing I want to address here is the actual title of this video, which is Web3, a Libertarian Dystopia, which is also referenced in the video itself. Now, I don't agree with this title because I don't fundamentally view crypto movement as inherently libertarian. Yes, there are people who are libertarian who are interested in crypto, but when you really go deep down into the core philosophies of crypto, one of the key things is decentralism. Now, if we go into the definition of libertarianism, we can also find in the current libertarian movement, which is overly represented over the old one, is that they do believe in free market capitalism, and they always, whether it's Ben Shapiro, free market will fix it, free market this, free market that. Now, free market fundamentally is a system that believes in monopolies. Decentralism is fundamentally against any form of monopoly, whether it's run by government or by corporations. So this idea that, massive corporations could come in and buy everything, that would not sit with true decentralists in this movement. Obviously, some people are not faithful to the decentralist idea. Some are here to just make money. The other point I really also want to point out is that whatever it's Bitcoin, whatever it's Ethereum, or even XRP, all of these codes are open source. And open source is an idea, at least according to some people, it is, inherently kind of socialist or even communist, according to some people. And so in a lot of ways, crypto is a melting pot of many different ideologies, and maybe right now it is overtly represented by libertarian people because those are perhaps the kinds who are most involved, but it doesn't mean that they will not change their ideology into a more decentralist thing, or more left-leaning people get involved in crypto in different ways. So I don't like this idea that we are calling this sort of like a libertarian wet dream. There are a lot of communists also in crypto who can build their own systems. It is open source. Anybody can basically build top of it. So it's a very long video, so I'm not going to be addressing every single point made on it because there's a lot of things I agree with her, and also there's things that are kind of off topic, like the gold standard. I don't think it's super relevant to this discussion. And she also has sources here in case people want to check it out. And one of the books that she mentioned here is actually The Politics of Bitcoin, Software as a Right-Wing Extremism. And when I read the description of this book, I think, if you want to learn about technology, maybe this is not the best book to read to get the most objective stance. Just saying. But let's kind of go these timestamps which I have selected from the video, and let's address them.
That matter. Blockchain technology is a bit like, imagine there was a really easy, quick way of making payments called, I don't know, Visa, right?
So let's talk about Visa here first. And I think if I'm reading the cues correctly here, I want to steal man her arguments, but it seems a bit of like a snarky comment, a bit sarcastic there. So kind of addressing that Visa is kind of like the superior payment method here. So what we need to understand about, like, there are things that Visa does really well, but there's also things that Visa is really bad at. Let's talk about the actual chargebacks. So this is, updated from September 21, probably the latest information you can find about them. I don't expect it to change that much in like course of 7 months. And this goes into how much chargeback fraud is happening with cards. And this is 0.6% across all industries. By average, in 2017, 306 successful fraudulent transactions per month per merchant. That is not a good number, okay? This is a very problematic thing. There are a lot of like carder frauds, and these chargebacks have been extremely bad in the gaming community, for example, from what I've heard. And this has also increased over the years. Credit card fraud has increased 18.4% in 2018 and is still climbing. If somebody has a source on like charge per year, I'm not like sure has it now increased or decreased, but it's still there, and it actually is a fair amount of these transactions. We're talking about 0.6, which is actually higher than that is in cryptocurrency, which is a source we're going to be looking into later on.
I cannot put my trust into this friend, so instead I will put my trust in thousands of strangers on a decentralized network that are actually mostly controlled by random millionaire tech nerds that own loads of shipping containers full of Nvidia graphics cards in fucking Siberia or...
Okay, so first of all, there are a lot of developers who don't really make that much money. I mean, there are people in India, East Asia, Eastern Europe, South America who have plenty of developers, and they are not millionaires. They are maybe making like average salaries there. It's not like guaranteed that you will become a millionaire by being an actual developer in Ethereum or something. And secondly, just because you are an Ethereum developer, even a big one, doesn't mean that you are participating on the mining process. So there's no need for you to have million GPUs or CPUs somewhere. Like, that is a bit like, a bit of a stretch there. And also, a lot of the times when I've talked to developers, they don't really care about the miners and their rights in general. Like, they just want to build dApps and stuff like that on top of these chains that they work on. Secondly, nothing stops people from setting up their own nodes in these blockchains. The requirements can be a bit hard for perhaps from people from Africa, but if you live in, in a most second or first world countries, you can definitely acquire a node and start running it on your own computer. So this idea that all the nodes and everything is, run by these billionaires is not exactly true.
As a solution to the problem of the banking system, but hasn't really caught on much outside of purchasing black market goods, money laundering and tax evasion.
Okay, so let's address this idea that crypto is only used for illegal activities mostly. Now, we already established that credit cards already have 0.6% fraudulent activity on them. We also know that banks are participating on money laundering as well. We know that crimes are happening with cash as well. So any form of currency always is going to be having crime. That's just something that we have to accept. And obviously we have to find ways to curve that down. Now, if we look at the percent-wise of the transactions from 2017 to 2021, now, I do probably agree that during the Silk Road era, we probably had a lot of Bitcoin being used for these, illegal drugs, child porn, and other black market stuff, obviously. But here's the thing, though. When in the beginning you only have options to use the money for illegal activities and you don't have real adoption from retailers, websites to buy legit services, obviously the money is going to be flowing more towards the illegal stuff. But now that we have seen more adaptation happening and things where you can basically use your crypto on, the crime aspect has significantly gone down. Yes, 2019 it was highest 3.37. But when we're looking at the charts of what source of crimes are actually happening, I think this is a lot more important. So in the past 2 years, or when we look at the chart, there was a lot of child porn, darknet material. But when you look at the 2 last years on those 2 things, they are very, very low, okay? It's actually on minus. I don't know what that means in the child abuse stuff, but it has, you know, turned towards in stolen funds, and that is a lot to do with hacks from DeFi and things like that. And that is not as bad. I'm not saying it's good. I'm not saying it's not as bad as, you know, for these other things that were happening with crypto in the past.
But in order to cash out without making a huge loss, they'd need to find other people who were willing to pay more for their fake computer coins than they paid for it originally. But where were they going to find these silly little suckers to provide this much needed liquidity? Cryptocurrency...
Okay, so this idea that crypto is some type of a pyramid scheme or Ponzi, I mean, is kind of ridiculous take in the first place, because when we look at our current monetary systems, now, I don't exactly, this is a picture I didn't do, I just found it. Now, I don't exactly agree with this gold tier thing on the top, but whatever. So, in the real world, we have the central bank who creates the currency, that creates the debt, and he charges interest from the first recipients, which is the governments, Wall Street, mega corporations. It's a bit different on each country and, you know, different place. Secondly, it's going to be a loan to lower tier banks and small businesses who are going to be basically loaning it to the people. And then the people, or there might be mafia in the mix and loan sharks, and people loan it to other people. So it is basically a form of a pyramid scheme already. Crypto's model is not a pyramid scheme, it's not a Ponzi. Anybody can create their own currency and have their own form of distribution. There has been cryptocurrency projects which have embraced UBI, that is Universal Basic Income, and there can be many different forms of very socialist or communist types of distribution of money in the chains that you will be creating. So I think in a lot of ways this is still better than the current pyramid scheme that we are currently in.
It worked. In March 2021, in the NFT mania that followed, Ether's value skyrocketed along with this businessman.
Okay, Ethereum did not skyrocket, okay? Ethereum's price during that point in March and April was around 1.9 to 1.5k, and it went to peak at around 4.1k. That is around 100 to 140% depending on which point and day you're actually looking at. But that is not skyrocketing in our industry. 5x, then we can maybe talk about skyrocketing. And this also happened in course of like what? A couple of months. Usually that happens in 24 hours or like a major rise or something. But like, and the idea that she also talks about that the Opensea volume has some type of a big impact on Ethereum's price is not just true. Back in that time, we had around, like, what is that, 148 million of a monthly volume during in March and April. And back in January this year, we had 5 billion volume. But how much is 5 billion from Ethereum's total trading volume per month? Well, it's not very much. We are talking about less than 1%. So 507 billion is the monthly trading volume of Ethereum. So the NFT trades that happen on Opensea are just a fraction, a drip in the sea in terms of impacting Ethereum price. When Ethereum's price goes down, then usually there is an impact of negative drop on NFT prices as well.
To be the utility of the project. This is what it's all for, right? This is the value. Yet there's barely any interest in it apart from people.
Well, I mean, when people call the word utility, even outside of crypto and inside of crypto, people kind of use it as a buzzword, but they never have actually defined to me when I've talked to them what constitutes as actual utility. Has the bag provided financial value to the holders? Yes, it has. Has it provided them bunch of whitelists to other NFT projects? Yes, it has. Has it, you know, brought them other types of interesting avenues and expansion to the existing big universe which they can benefit from, like the newly announced film trilogy, which is going to be funded by Coinbase. I mean, it is getting to be a pretty big brand. It could be on merchandise, which could later, you know, lead into revenue share, among other things. So in a lot of ways, I would argue that this has been something that has given at least value to them. But what is utility is a very subjective thing. And a lot of it feels to me that, you know, if I would argue it with you, you would probably say no to Scotsman. No, that's not utility, but whatever.
To one villain of the Münecat cinematic universe, Gary V. And we know...
Okay, so in this video, she talks about a lot of certain people like Peter Thiel, Jack Dorsey, Gary V, Mark Cuban, and of course Vitalik. Outside from Vitalik, all of those people are very minor players in the crypto scene. They're not developers. All of them have come to the scene like pretty late. I mean, Gary V came to crypto like late 2020 when he started to like jump into projects and getting involved with NFTs. So I don't think it's like fair to bring out these people who are like really bad representations of our movement that are not really like in very key positions of the development or the movement in total. And I think Gary V is definitely a PND artist. His NFT collection, definitely not recommending to buy it. And what, you know, Münecat talks about, the whole, you know, the rich friends who are buying his NFTs, you know, it is probably true. But that's why you never trust the celebrities coming into any movement, whether it's esports, gaming, crypto. It's always the same. These people come into movements and they exploit them. You know, it's nothing no different in any type of other thing.
From here. To even start playing Axie Infinity, you need to buy a team of 3 Axie NFTs, which are $200 each. But don't worry if you can't afford that, because you can just become a scholar and rent an Axie from a sort of, I don't know, Axie landlord.
What is up, YouTube? Bryson here, and today I'm going to be giving you my advice on how to earn a scholarship in Axie Infinity.
And then you can grind and grind and grind for hours on the game, but don't forget to have fun now, and your manager sits around taking a large chunk of your earnings.
Okay, so let's not pretend that Axie Infinity is the only blockchain game out there. The reason why it's #1, because it's actually one of those, you know, semi-decent one. It has a good art style and obviously been around for a lot of the time to, you know, grow a, you know, fan base. But there are a lot of blockchain-based games which do not require any form of an investment. When we are looking at, for example, the recent announcement, and this obviously came after her video, there is going to be a free-to-play version of Axie Infinity. And also, like, this idea of, like, demonizing people who want to play games to earn money. Like, I mean, that's what a lot of YouTubers are doing. That's what a lot of streamers are doing. You're just, like, using your own talent, which is being good at the game and making money out of it, because you're not necessarily very good at being, like, a persona or something. I don't see anything fundamentally wrong about that if you want to do that instead of flipping burgers at McDonald's. Besides, there's a lot of benefits from doing jobs at home, being more productive, saving more time, maybe even saving more money. You don't have to buy a bike or bus tickets to get to your work. You just have a lot more things to do, and in some cases your work hours might be less as well. And it's entirely subjective, by the way, whatever someone will enjoy grinding or not. Me or you is not to dictate how people feel about certain activity inside those games.
These collections made $100 or less, which means that after various fees, they actually lost money. 20% made less than $92 after fees, and then 11% made a whopping $223 after fees, and so on. That's for an entire collection of NFTs, which could be anything up to around 10,000 JPEGs. And it's funny.
Okay, so first of all, a lot of people who don't know much about NFTs always address them as JPEGs. An NFT can be an MP3, it can be a video file, it can be a doc file, it can be many things. JPEG is just the most common thing out there.
That you really have to dig to find this information, kind of like how you have to dig to find the income disclosure statement of any MLM. If people...
Well, there is a lot of blockchain statistic websites, which we have already showed one of them in this video, that being Dune Analytics. There is a lot more blockchain analytical data from smart contracts, from any form of blockchain activity than any other fiat system. You go ask your bank how much they are printing right now, they are not able to tell you that. They probably don't even know. Blockchain data is a lot more sophisticated than any type of a fiat system that has existed before. So this idea that, oh, I'm not able to find data about these sales is just bullshit. It just means that you're not able to read the statistics on Etherscan or BlockScout or whatever. And I don't blame you. It can be sometimes very hard, and that's why you need to go spending months and years basically learn about blockchain. You can't just be, you know, jumping in for 2 weeks and think you know everything.
And that's not even mentioning all of the artists that have had their artwork stolen and minted. And Opensea got so many takedown requests that they just ended up stopping processing them. Great system, guys!
Well, first of all, I don't like Opensea either, and they're just a one of, you know, NFT exchanges out there out of like, I don't know, 100 or something. And they are the most popular one because they came out first, and it's been pretty hard for other ones to basically take the market share. And there are a lot of NFT marketplaces which have curated systems where people are not able to sell fake art. But we fundamentally have to agree that the way that the blockchain works is really, really hard to prevent copyright, you know, crimes being done. Blockchain is not inherently a system that is, you know, made to prevent that from happening. And I thought you were a leftist. Isn't like the Marxist idea to be against copyright? Copyright was invented for early capitalism, and an important system has grown ever since. To oppose copyright is to oppose capitalism. But hey, let's move on.
Users who make the whitelist and later sell their newly minted NFT gain a profit 75.7% of the time versus just 20.8% for users who do so without being whitelisted, Chainalysis said, citing Opensea data. The data...
Okay, so first of all, once again, it's only just the Opensea data, and this is a very crucial thing about the puzzle. Because the reason why we started to use whitelisting systems in Ethereum, because if you don't have a whitelist systems, it means that every single person will be buying at the same time through the smart contract. And the way Ethereum works will cause a very high gas fees when more people are interacting with a set contract same time. So when a normally person mints an NFT through a contract on a very normal gas time, this could be anywhere from $30 to $40. But when you actually go into a moment where you access everybody to mint from the smart contract at the same time, can cause the fees to go above $500 at very, very crazy sums, because Ethereum scaling, sadly, is just not there where it should be. So this was basically a thing that was meant to create, to serve more you know, lower end users who necessarily didn't have all that money to basically spend on those insane gas fees. Now, has it, you know, been used in other senses as well? Yeah, kinda. It's not very nice. But this was the initial reason why we actually transitioned to whitelist systems inside Ethereum. And obviously, when you look into the statistics of other chains, how NFTs are working on Wax, for example, you're gonna find very, very different forms of statistics. How many units are being sold, how many people are making profit, and etc. in terms of fees and everything. So we can't just look this NFT lens perspective just from the Opensea, because Opensea only operates through Ethereum and Polygon, where most of that data comes from, and now recently obviously Solana, which is in beta. But there are a lot of other exchanges in the NFT space, in other chains, which have very different data, which might show a bit better perspective, which doesn't seem as whale heavy.
Asked to make the project look legit enough to even get it on a semi-legit exchange like Coinbase, just slap it on a shitty one like PancakeSwap and get a bot to post about it to Reddit every 3 minutes. But of course, Coinbase eventually realized that being semi-responsible about the coins they allowed people to list on their exchange meant that they were losing customers to competitors, so they changed their tune, and now they're basically the same as PancakeSwap. So that's cool. People...
Okay, first of all, like, getting into a tier 1 exchange like Coinbase is going to be costing you somewhere to 6 to 7 digits. Not just anyone can get listed on Coinbase, okay? There needs to be some level of, like, you know, vetting on the smart contracts, audits. There is, you know, some type of a, you know, time as the, you know, the project has existed in the space. It's not like you're going to be listing a project that was launched yesterday on a Coinbase. Also, PancakeSwap is a decentralized exchange. There is no listing process. Anybody can basically get listed there without anything, because you can import any smart contract of a token inside that exchange.
To ending fin stuff.
There's a rush to pocket as much cash as possible before any real restrictions are put into place. And who loses out? The retail investor, again. At best,
I don't know where is this claim based on. I didn't find any source for it. The retail investor at any point can install any type of a payment system that accepts crypto on, you know, whatever they run, a small shop or a barber service. Nothing stops you unless it's illegal in your country. You can accept it as a form of a payment. And there has been many small investors around the world who have accepted cryptocurrency as a payment for a very long time. In matter of fact, retail investors in a lot of ways have been there much earlier than these big VC companies. And, you know, these stores which have accepted forms of cryptocurrency have existed since the early times, 2015, 2016. So this idea why the retail investors are losing, I don't buy it. I just don't buy it at all.
Bitcoin will never be widely accepted as a form of currency in businesses until it is stable, and it will never be stable until it is widely accepted. And at a larger scale, when it is potentially wider accepted, we meet different issues such as the scalability problem. If Bitcoin processed all of the transactions Visa does today, it will use as much electricity as the rest of the world put together and will be even slower than it is now. But
okay, so this is totally untrue. And that is because she doesn't understand that when we are talking about Bitcoin scaling, that will always be through the Lightning Network. The Lightning Network is something that is being built top of Bitcoin, but the Lightning Network does not use GPUs, CPUs, or ASIC machines in order to run that layer 2 network, so to speak. So there is no underlying electricity cost outside from people running nodes on their computers, which, you know, electricity consumption is, you know, pretty non-existent. I mean, probably a couple of light bulbs or something. So fundamentally, when we are talking about Bitcoin replacing the Visa system to the Lightning Network, it's definitely not going to be costing much electricity as she is claiming. Now, I'm not going to be saying the capabilities of the Lightning Network, will it be able to even scale at that size? Because I'm not a maximalist. I've always been a Bitcoin minimalist. I mean, I don't know, can it be ever like reach such high TPS? Maybe in the future there might be some other solutions for it to scale higher, but this idea that, oh, we're just going to be scaling the layer 1 of Bitcoin is just totally not true, and that's not how it would be done.
this school of thought, Bitcoin is only useful as a hedge against inflation, but the number only goes up because of the speculative belief that Bitcoin will have future uses, so it is a much riskier investment.
So this idea that Bitcoin is valued at, you know, a further utility for it from a technological perspective is not something that majority of the Maxxies believe. The Bitcoin Maxxies have changed their narrative about what Bitcoin is multiple times, and the recent one always been, it is a store of value and hedge against inflation. And that's the only reason why it will be going up in price, in their opinion. Then there's obviously the people who believe in the Lightning Network, and that will obviously bring the value up, but I don't personally believe that that many Bitcoin maximalists actually believe in the Lightning Network narrative, because it's very hard to implement, and it has a lot of restrictions on it. So this idea that, oh, we are believing that Bitcoin will become used to pay coffee on XYZ, it's just not the case among a lot of Maxxies. Maybe some, but not all.
all of them the entrepreneurs were working on there, they're all working on payments, and the most interesting of them were working on Bitcoin.
Realistically, poorer citizens of developing countries are, slowly but surely, getting banked. The adoption of mobile money is spreading. Cryptos, Silicon Valley tech CEOs, VCs, and Jack Dorsey all have a real sudden charitable streak in them in the form of ensuring entrepreneurs in developing countries can find a way of being paid. The philosophy of the most successful tech startups in the past has been ease of use for the end user. So why are they not instead investing in streamlining mobile money solutions which are already being used widespread, and don't produce a MacBook Air worth of e-waste for every transaction? And
Okay, so first of all, Jack Dorsey, don't like him. He's not a good representation even for Bitcoin, and he has very bad takes, and he's lying basically on that clip in the beginning. Now, to give some context to the people who are watching, in Africa, in certain countries, mobile time on your phone is more valuable than the actual country's currency, and it's, you know, somehow has managed to become more valuable because the countries there have, you know, have gone crazy inflation, and the phone time has, you know, kept its price somewhat, and people are, you know, changing goods in exchange for mobile time. And that's very interesting to me as a subject. But however, there has already been a multitude of different crypto projects which have offered people services in these regions, especially in Africa, such as like Cardano, which are partnering up with World Mobile, who are running tests on Tanzania, and now they're going to be expanding in East African market as well. Earlier years back, we also had Electronium, which launched a very affordable phone in the African continent. It was like less than $50 or something, and basically they could use the ETN cryptocurrency to top up their phones in countries like Nigeria, Uganda, and Tanzania. And there's probably a lot of other projects which I don't know about who have addressed this type of a thing. But Bitcoin has never been about the third worlders. It's created by white people for white people. So do not expect that the Maxxies care about third world things. You have to explore the other blockchains, and those have a lot more higher focus on the people outside of, you know, first world countries.
will eliminate the need for a crypto exchange and will eliminate the need for a Nigerian taxi driver to set up a MetaMask wallet and get paid for a ride with an extremely volatile digital token. Oh,
so nothing stops from the taxi driver accepting stablecoins like USDC, like USD, like DAI. This is not volatile, and you basically can exchange it back to real dollars if you so desire to.
blockchain tech, it's just a simple private key. This makes it vastly easier for someone to socially engineer someone's passphrase and gain access to their wallet. No.
Okay, it's not that easy. Private key is not like a normal password potato 123 question mark. It has a lot more complexity to it. Unless you're putting your private key literally in the cloud or somewhere, or there's a phishing attempt on, you know, from an email or something.
But 2FA needed. No name of your first.
Okay, so also there are some technologies in place where certain crypto wallets are using 2FA, and I'm sure that in future we're going to be seeing a lot more of those as well.
Hamster, and they have done it multiple times, and once it
Okay, they have not done it. What she's talking about, well, let's actually get into that in a second.
happens, it's irreversible. There's no bank to call, no credit card company to ask for a chargeback. You only have to spend 5 minutes.
Okay, so this website, which we also featured in the beginning of this video, is talking about hacking of smart contracts. When a smart contract is being hacked, there is no association with a seed phrase or a private key. Smart contracts do not have those. These are contracts that are coded, and usually there might be very poor smart contracts which can be exploited in different methods. Sometimes it requires to use heavy amounts of gas and money. Sometimes you just gotta be smart about it when you're gonna be using it at a certain time period. Now, these hackers have basically exploited the weaknesses in these codes, and this is how they have basically made a lot of money. But no private keys in the process of actually being hacked, unless the developers like left those private keys to the developer accounts which deploy the contract, which have like the administrator contract them on some type of a cloud. But this is not the case what is happening here, as she is claiming.
Actually inherently incentivized, there is even more incentive for criminals to find bugs in a code, drain people's wallets, and freely spend the stolen crypto in.
Okay, so let's start here. So once again, this is kind of the same situation as my last point. So people are hacking the smart contracts, and in case people have deposited money to the smart contracts, then they get to those funds. But if your money is sitting on your wallet, it doesn't matter if some smart contract is being hacked, even if you have used it in the past, they are not able to get into your wallet and stole your money. Then there's another point where she says that there's incentive to do these scams. Yeah, in a way there is, but there's also a lot of grants being given out on a very frequent basis from many companies and millions in bounties for finding bugs and reporting them back. Obviously, some people think that, well, I can make more money than actually hacking, than giving out the details to the developers. So yeah, there are some malicious actors, and that applies to any movement out there.
It's anonymous, private. So it's not, it's pseudonymous, meaning anyone who finds your wallet address can easily see your entire transaction history.
Okay, so this was probably one of the worst statements in the whole video because it's so blatantly untrue. We have things called privacy coins, and privacy coins are for, obviously, keeping your privacy up. We have coins like Monero, and Monero is designed the way when you paste the address into the actual block explorer, it is not able to show you how much money is in that specific address. Now there's a lot of other forms of privacy which comes through Bitcoin Mixer, Ethereum Mixer. So in public chains where you are able to see those transactions, you're able to shuffle those money into different transactions, and basically it's very hard to track where those money basically end up going. So you might have known where the person held its money at some point, but after they put it into a mixer, it's going to be really, really hard to find out where it is now. And obviously there are different things that are being built up, like privacy smart contracts, privacy tokens, and there's a lot of ways, if you know how, to basically hide your identity, where you're hiding your money, and where you're keeping it, and etc. So this idea that it is pseudo-anonymous, it is partially true. Yeah, there are things, but privacy is getting enhanced more and more, even in transparent blockchains like Bitcoin and Ethereum.
That's not to mention that if someday, miraculously, Ethereum's smart contracts actually have some sort of utility, all of your data will be on the blockchain in order for it to work. Your mortgage, your medical records, everything you've ever posted on social media. Say perhaps someone doxed you or posted revenge porn. It's immutable on an append-only database.
Okay, so Ethereum still has forms of encryption. So way it basically would work, you're gonna be logging in with your Web3 wallet into a service which has that medical data. But at no point anybody basically in this movement has a desire to basically move all of that medical data inside the blockchain. If we did that, we would use something like a privacy chain like Monero or something else. Nobody is really delighted about the idea of having too much personal information inside any specific chain. And even if it did, it would probably, in Ethereum's case, would look like there's a transaction that you have interacted with health record smart contract, but it cannot show you what type of a data or things have been written there because it's hidden from the actual public. So there are forms of smart contracts that uses forms of privacy where certain data is encrypted. So this is not how we would do it, and this is not the chain we would use to store that data on blockchain. There are a lot of things that don't belong to blockchain and a lot of things that you can also use on a blockchain. For example, VeChain is a good example, which basically tracks packages and from all around the world, and that's a great system to use. But when we're talking about personal information, that is not at least my goal or people who I have talked to.
Clear. Russia is actually attempting to use crypto to undermine the sanctions on the US dollar, and he tricked Vitalik Buterin into helping him do this. In a world run by Bitcoin or any crypto, wars will still be funded. For some reason they seem to think that fiat funds wars, and for some reason they think that crypto would never be spent on wars.
Okay, so first of all, like, Vitalik has gone into many different countries, teach different people about crypto, and that's what a lot of other developers has done as well. So I don't think that they probably thought that, you know, these things could escalate to the way that they are right now. But that being aside, Vitalik has donated a considerable amount of money, and so has the crypto community, to Ukraine, FYI. Now, when it comes to this idea of war, but let's kind of like play your type of a narrative here, which is the libertarian dystopia. Only thing that is really funding wars is the governments. There are not really that many private militaries which have huge sectors of money and are very active around the world. So in case we would go to that libertarian dystopia, governments wouldn't have a lot of money, so they wouldn't be wasting things like guns and, you know, weaponry in general. The development would be just basically to buy the bread on the table, probably. So smaller governments usually reflect also a smaller military. I mean, don't quote me on that, but I think that is true.
Bitcoin like the Fed prints money. We're going to come back to the Federal Reserve and monetary policy, but I'm going to point out here that Bitcoin's 21 million cap is 5 lines of code which could be removed at any time with a hard fork in the system. Just because no one wants the cap to be removed right now doesn't mean that this will always be the case, and this seems like a good time to...
Okay, so there's very, very few people among the maximalists who would actually agree to changing the supply of Bitcoin from that specific number that has been laid out from the very first day. And doing a hard fork is not an easy thing to do. You need over 51% of the hash power to make that consensus. And that's not something that is easily being done. So we are entertaining an idea that has a very, very low likeliness to happen. Now, if Bitcoin would transition to proof of stake, let's say there was too many outside forces putting a pressure into it, maybe then, but this proof of work iteration of Bitcoin, I don't definitely see that happening or even remotely realistic as of right now.
The crypto ecosystem is hard and you have to pay taxes on it, so stablecoins have come about to allow people to hold their crypto in a token which is tied to the value of the US dollar.
Okay. So this text which she's showing on the screen is kind of bad because stablecoin can be a lot of things. It can be pegged to euro, it can be pegged to gold, it can be pegged to silver, pegged to diamonds, and basically in future it can be into wood, iron, copper, many different things. And there's even ones that are pegged to the cost of electricity in US. So yes, most of them are, you know, USD based stable coins, but there are a lot of them out there, and stable coins doesn't just equate to fiat money.
So stablecoins like Tether and USDC are also supposed to be fully backed by real dollars, but guess what? They aren't, and they lied about...
Okay, so to steelman her argument here, she probably misspoke when she said USDC and Tether. Tether is definitely not backed by, fully, by US dollars, but USDC definitely is. Coinbase is a legit company. So yeah, I probably she misspoke here, but USDC is definitely legit and is backed. USDT, aka Tether, is not.
Coin mining was mostly decentralized back in the noughties, with a few early adopters running single graphics cards in their homes, but it only took around 5 years for just 3 mining pools to have control over more than half of the network. And the people using them now are suffering from all of the negatives of the decentralized aspects, whilst using centralized apps built on the blockchain, so they're not actually benefiting from the decentralized aspects at all, they're actually only benefiting from the centralized bits, i.e. using Opensea and exchanges to cash out into usable money, all things over...
Okay, I'm not really sure what she was trying to say here, because at the beginning she talks about Bitcoin hashing power basically being distributed to 3 different pools, and then she just goes on to talk about like applications which are centralized. Like, what are you talking about? There's not really a lot of dApps on Bitcoin that nobody's using. Opensea is a dApp on Ethereum. So this is a very weirdly written out, and I'm not really sure what she's trying to say here. The benefits of decentralization are not necessarily coming from the... Just because the hashing power would be divided between 3 entities or 10 entities has really no control over the benefits of decentralization. Long as they don't conspire to do a 51% attack, things are all Gucci. Now, I'm not saying that this is a perfect model. Once again, I don't like proof of work or Bitcoin. But the fact of the matter is, there's no difference into the benefits that the blockchain is bringing to these people, whatever the hashing power is decentralized more or less as of right now in Bitcoin.
Even though we don't know who Satoshi Nakamoto is, they have been active on the internet in the past, and nothing is stopping them from becoming active again and proposing a fork in the future. And being the owner of an estimated $73 billion worth of Bitcoin, or 5% of the total supply, I wonder whether people would choose the fork that Lord Satoshi proposes or the one that tanks in value. Sounds super decentralized to me in the...
Okay, so a lot of things wrong here. First of all, there's no wallet that holds 5% of the Bitcoin supply. We can actually confirm this ourselves. The highest wallet owns 1.33% of that coins, and that is a Binance cold wallet. The Binance, in case you forgot a recap earlier, this is an exchange. So out of that 1.33%, a lot of those are user funds. And you can see there are other Binance accounts here at Bitfinex, OKEx. Exchanges hold the most amount of these Bitcoin wallets, which are then owned by the actual people. So this is pretty decentralized in terms of the distribution as it is. Secondly, once again, it is not an individual who decides what is going to be going through a soft fork or a hard fork. In the end of the day, it is always going to be the hashing power that dictates the hard fork on Bitcoin. So it doesn't matter if Satoshi comes back, which he won't. And there's like he would have come out earlier. Like there's no reason for him to come here tomorrow or today. It's just not going to happen. It's super unlikely. Now, obviously, I have my theories who Satoshi is. That's another video. But fundamentally, him coming back, him proposing stuff, I mean, it's not going to happen. And it doesn't matter if he does. Let's say, for the sake of the argument, he comes in and he gets people to do the soft fork or hard fork out of Bitcoin. But when a fork happens, there's always going to be a chain that is going to be keeping that continuation. So over the time, we had forks like Bitcoin Cash, which then itself spread into Bitcoin SV, and then spread into Bitcoin ABC. And there has been many forks out of Bitcoin. But what basically happens, let's say you have, this is the block where the split happens. In this block, you're holding 5 Bitcoin in your wallet. And once the fork happens, you're going to have 5 Bitcoin Cash. But you're also going to be keeping that 5 Bitcoin as well. So your money is not going to be thrown into the dumpster. You are basically going to be having ownership of those same coins in both of these chains. And when the third thing happens, then you're going to be having 5 Bitcoin gold as well. Long as you had some of that coin before this split happens. So basically, nobody's losing money. Obviously, when these splits happen, there always been a fair sum of drop down in value for the coin that has been split from. And that is obvious. But, you know, and fundamentally, hard forks happening in Bitcoin, very hard to do, very expensive to do, and it's just very unlikely.
Blockchains planning on moving to a proof-of-stake system. The consensus vote on the chain are given to the proportion of the amount of money you have, meaning wealthy individuals and companies can effectively fork a chain to their preferred code if they achieve more than 50% of consensus votes.
Okay, so to be clarifying here, when a proof-of-work chain wants to transition to proof-of-stake, it still reaches its consensus in hard fork by having over 51% of the existing hash power. So miners basically decide whatever will it go to proof-of-stake or not. And once the proof-of-stake is implemented, then miners will have no decision whatsoever, but indeed actually the people who hold the biggest amount of bags. Now, there are a lot of different variations of proof of stake, like delegated proof of stake, where smaller delegates can come together and vote for a delegate who will basically do decisions based on their interests. So basically, the little people can have a bit more to say by banding together under a certain delegate, which might, favor their vision of that actual chain. Now, it also needs to be understood that community ultimately decides these things. A best example of this was the platform known as Steam with its own blockchain. A Chinese guy named Justin Sun came out, bought the company who also owned some of the tokens. He installed his own puppet delegates into this network. And what happened? Basically, the community forked out of Steam and created their new chain called Hive. And now, currently, even though Hive didn't have all of that super money backing behind it, It is currently the more prevailing chain of the two, currently standing 3 times the value of Steam, and also I bet in terms of user base, it has definitely the following. So this idea that, oh, some rich guys are gonna come in and change things, if the community doesn't like it, ultimately the community drive the numbers, that drive the social media, all of these things which are really important for the health of each project. So this idea that, you know, you can just come in and buy everything and hope everything's good old dandy is not actually true. So everybody has always at any point of time to basically fork out, you know, if they don't like how things are being run.
I agree, but I at least think there should be some evidence of a tangible use case by now that can't be done on Web2 protocols. HTML.
So, okay, let's start here. What are the things that Web2 is not able to provide right now, what Web3 is? Now, there are a lot of things which I could go into, but I want to focus on the most important ones. And number one, obviously, is censorship resistance. Web2 are inherently centralized, and in Web2 platforms, you can easily get censored. One of the most biggest ones, obviously, is counterparty risk. When you're operating on a centralized Web2 platform, obviously, there's always some form of counterparty risk, and this also kind of chimes into the whole censorship aspect, but a bit differently. Now, the third thing, which is probably the most best for non-crypto users, is actually blockchain voting, because currently the voting systems that we use in the real world are not empirically verifiable. You have to trust the consensus that everybody is not rigging the game, nobody's burning tickets, nobody is sending double tickets to this guy. Under blockchain, we can actually have the first and real elections for the first time, long as obviously the nodes are distributed in a good way and people are obviously educated about crypto voting. And obviously you would have to have like some type of a simplified system how the votes are like written on, you know, on the voting locations, and then put it into the blockchain in a way that people can view whatever there has been any tampering on those votes.
The fundamental problem with believing that Web3 utility is on its way. Because a blockchain needs to pay miners to mine to make it work, a blockchain needs a native currency. So
okay, so first of all, blockchain doesn't necessarily need a form of a native currency. Secondly, not all blockchains have miners. We already discussed about this. You're contradicting yourself here on the video when you talked about proof of stake. Proof of stake doesn't have miners. It has stakers. We also have currencies like XRP, Stellar, Nano, which are fully pre-mined from day one. So there's no form of mining or minting tokens from the initial, you know, first block that is basically created.
0.1% of people invested in Bitcoin own 27% of Bitcoin right now. Who do you...
As we already showed the chart earlier in this video, this is not true because it basically counts in the exchanges who are the custodial owners of those wallets. And yes, technically they could run off with that money, but they know that they can't do that and everybody would basically, you know, issue a hard fork or something. So that's a very out of the question, but inherently, yes, large money is being held by exchanges right now, but that doesn't mean that they are real owners of those bitcoins. So this chart is very misleading that was just shown.
Is a phenomenon libertarians have always dreamed of, and it's called seasteading.
Innovative political systems could serve humanity better than governments do today. That's why we work to enable seasteads, floating cities which will give people opportunities to peacefully test new ideas about living together. The most successful will become thriving new societies, inspiring change around the world. We're creating this future because governments profoundly affect our lives, and improving them will unlock enormous human potential.
The aim of Ethereum, it seems to me, is Thiel's second chance at seasteading.
So the idea of seasteading, maybe for some, is about avoiding taxes. But what fundamentally it does, as you saw on the clip, it is about these hubs which can be connected or not connected to each other. So when a consensus in the community is reached about a certain law, certain members of that community can basically detach themselves from that hub and join another one. So basically it creates a situation of leverage if a one platform, for example, has a mini golfing course and that is owned by Matt. And Matt basically wants, you know, maybe we want a better drinking water here. And then people basically have to come in and make a trade with Matt that is, you know, also catering to his needs in the legal decisions, so they can also enjoy still Matt's, you know, mini golf in this place. And it's a very interesting political system that, you know, is going to be very expensive and very futuristic. But I still think it's not just for avoiding tax.
Worthless as a currency, but it's the perfect marketing strategy. It means...
I mean, what is this based on? What is the source? Cryptocurrencies like Ethereum and Bitcoin are vastly outperforming a lot of currencies in the third world, even in Europe and parts of Asia. Like, what is considered as, you know, not good currency? Now, I'm not saying that Ethereum and Bitcoin especially are really designed to be currencies in a lot of ways, but at some point there's probably going to be one that is going to be acting more like currency. Maybe it's Solana or something else that is able to cater to a higher TPS, but this idea that they are failing, it doesn't really look like to me in a lot of ways, because they're also getting a lot more adaptation than any other fiat currency. When was the last time Zimbabwean dollar got accepted somewhere outside of Zimbabwe, or they made this huge partnership that, hey, you're going to be buying wood with Zimbabwean dollars from us or something? Like, this is not a thing.
This is a utopian vision based on an engineer's entirely systemic analysis of how a society should be governed. Cultural and political contexts eradicated. The entire system is hard-coded to realize the whims of the richest in society. A free market.
So, I don't know where's the source for that blockchain or DAOs are removing any form of political or cultural context. Where is it based on? Every DAO decision is obviously done in the code, but there's always a discussion that happens before the decision is made on forums, on podcasts, and people go even to have speeches on these conferences about these changes. It's not like there's no conversation happening on any DAO decision. If anything, these decisions are going to become more prominent as more time goes on. And this also idea that the rich will be controlling the narrative or the decisions of the DAO. Once again, I've told you a million times, every blockchain almost is open source. At any point, if you don't like the decisions the rich are making, the community can always fork out and start their own thing without these rich people.
Free market is a type of democracy, but one where the poor get the fewest votes. And this is exactly how a DAO works, and this is exactly how proof of stake works.
No, no, no. There's nothing that stops you from coding a DAO that will allow every person that holds the token or the NFT have same amount of weight in the actual vote that is taking place in the DAO. There has been some forms of experimentation on this where I believe it was on EOS, where the votes were always on each account counted as same. So yes, the things are kind of run like this currently, but that doesn't mean it cannot be changed or other projects can't come along and start building it in a different way, and how decisions are basically met or how the consensus is being reached. There's nothing that stops you from coding it in a different way.
This was already proven with the catastrophic failure of Ethereum's first ever DAO, the DAO, when the blockchain was hard forked to reverse a hack, draining their investors of $50 million. The VCs didn't want to lose their money, so they changed the rules. The unforked chain, Ethereum Classic, still exists, but its crypto is only worth $25 now. So I wonder why most people chose the chain that the rich people chose. And
okay, so a lot of misinformation here. So first and foremost, it was a pretty, you know, heavy consensus on doing the change. 97% of ETH folders basically voted to hard fork happen. Among the people who probably resisted it was probably people who were involved with the hack probably. So this wasn't like 70 to 30. This was, you know, very, very high consensus that this had to happen. Now, as a reminder, when you make a comparison, what is the ETC price now versus Ethereum price? It doesn't really matter. Because once again, this is the same thing as what I showed earlier. If you had Ethereum, 5 Ethereum at this point before the hard fork happened, after the hard fork happens, you still have that 5 Ethereum, and you also have 5 Ethereum Classic. Now, you also mentioned that, oh, it was the rich or anything. No, there were a lot of poor people, all users from every types of income brackets who hold it, DAO, DAI tokens or MakerDAO tokens or Ethereum doing at that point who were impacted by it. Obviously, everybody thought that this was going to be the good thing for everybody, and it would have caused a lot of complexions in the thing if it would have been just disregarded, as it didn't happen. Obviously, Ethereum Classic, for this reason, do not have the DAI currency in their blockchain. So this was the right thing to do in a lot of ways. Obviously, was it like very purist in terms of the cryptocurrency, you know, beliefs of immutability and things like that? Yeah, I can understand that. But let's not pretend that this was some type of a rich move. The developers, the miners, everybody, the users were pretty much on and wanted to basically have this change because it benefited everybody, not just the rich.
The main apps on your home screen. So one of them could be a marketing company DAO. A company could come along to this marketing company DAO, perhaps a pharmaceutical company selling drugs, and they could say to the marketing DAO, I want you to use all the data you have on the blockchain to start advertising my drugs to not just everybody who might need them now, but everybody who is likely to need them in the future. I would like you to plant our brand into their brain 5 or 10 years in advance. Hey, why not?
Okay, like, why would anybody want to have a DAO for marketing? Like, that doesn't make any sense to me. Like, the DAOs usually, like, use their own funds to market themselves. Like, what would be the point of having a marketing DAO? Because the DAO things are still going to be decisions which are going to be open in public. They're going to be showing you what type of strategies, perhaps, the people who are chosen to do the marketing plans. And, like, it doesn't, like, okay, this just doesn't make any lot of sense. And this is probably not the application that a lot of people probably would do. And once again, not all the things are going to be on blockchain. And if it even would be, it doesn't mean that all of that data is going to be on one blockchain. So you might know an identity of somebody in X blockchain, but he has obviously a different address on blockchain B. So is not able to necessarily distinguish, are these two accounts linked to each other? This is immense amount of you know, things that the AI has to consider, and it's not as simple as you make it out to be.
People like Andrew Yang even believe that it could be a force for eradicating poverty. And to do this, he wants to set up a DAO to lobby the government, one that gives more voting power to the rich. But
okay, once again, like, we have gone through this 1,000,000 times. The DAO is not necessarily controlled by the rich. If it is, you fork out of it and create your own. And it's not like just like, you know, neoliberal Democrats like, you know, Andrew Yang who are pro-blockchain. I mean, once again, we have people like Grimes who talks about decentralized UBI, and NFT gaming could be like a very revolutionary thing for the working people in this industry. And it's always already been very significant for a lot of artists and, you know, in music and things like that, and all the platforms that we have built it out throughout the years, and all the platforms that we're going to be building in the future. This paradigm, like seeing everything rich versus poor as the left always wants to see it as, is not is not very healthy for finding any types of solutions. The idea of the kind of society is to get along and, you know, find a common solution or common ground to deal with these problems.
Politics, blockchain, and 3D printing are all predicted as being the future. And they could be right, or they could be very wrong. But if they're right, it needs to be carefully regulated and seen over by the correct people. Otherwise, we will suffer from unfettered capitalism and rampant inequality in ways that we've never seen before. I have nothing against an automated revolution, because this could lead to humans having to work less. And this would mean more time for art, and none of it would be of fucking apes. But in the hands of the people that it's in now, it could lead to an elitist owner class and jobless masses. Currently, 47% of US jobs are threatened by automation, and this could go up to 80%. And with an economy based on digital ownership and smart contracts.
Imagine, you know, knowing that automation is going to be taking all the jobs and then also criticizing people for fucking playing games and making money out of it. Now, this is exactly why you need crypto and people building dApps on top of it and building infrastructure on top of it for paying for your data, paying to walk outside. All of these things are compensating of loss of those jobs which are going to be going away due to automation. Imagine being against the only saving grace which is going to be happening after that automation rollout is going to happen, because nothing else is going to be there to support these people. And I mean, yeah, there's going to be some bullshit slave UBI probably from the government, but outside from that, I mean, I think this sounds a lot more better.
He wants to take politics as as we know, out of many things, but not to be neutral, but to take democratic rights and rules for participation away. When only the code decides, and there is no place for debate and political struggle, how do the disenfranchised get heard? How do the powerless organize and revolt?
Who is the disenfranchised here? It's probably the person that tried to debate you, but you didn't seem care enough to reply, like those other people who I tried to talk about, Web3, and these subjects revolving around it. Now, as I already said a million times on this video, any point, anytime, anywhere, long as you have internet and maybe a mobile device or PC, you can start building on top of blockchain, or you can fork your own and can have any form of a distribution system as you want. Okay, like this idea that somebody can get deplatformed in Web3 sounds as absolutely ridiculous. Now, there's obviously companies and projects which, you know, LARP as Web3, like let's say Brave, but in a lot of ways, Brave also has a counterparty risk. It is Web 2.5 in a lot of ways, but ultimately, like, this idea of censorship happening is definitely coming from the state side and institutions, not from Web3, and that's pretty much it. As the last segment of this video, I want to talk about the energy FUD, which keeps mentioned a couple of times in her video and also in a lot of other articles which people have talked about it. And it's been kind of misrepresented in a lot of times. The question is not necessarily how much energy is being used, but how much of that energy is actually green based. So as you can see here, there's a lot of like different sources here breaking down how much of energy sources are being used in different regions all around the world. And here you can see a breakdown of Bitcoin mining, which is mostly green. So 56% is from green sources. For example, one of the biggest hashing powers comes from Sichuan province in China, and they basically use hydro energy, which is very, you know, as you can see, very prominent here on a lot of these things. And it doesn't really use a lot of like coal energy, as you can see when you compare these things. Now, also, I do want to mention, and there's another chart where you can basically compare how much BTC mining is green or sustainable power versus other countries are all around the world, and other types of statistics. I'm going to link this down below. But I also want to say this. Back in 2018, top 100 coins consisted of 35 proof of work chains. Now, to this day, that amount has dropped into 11. So more chains are using different algorithms which are not proof of work, that are very electricity or emission friendly, so to speak. And out of those 11, we know Ethereum is transitioning to be proof of stake, and Doge also has been talked to go into proof of stake, and that would basically leave around 9 proof of work coins, which most of them are probably going to be phased out. So if you're going to be talking to me from 5 years from now, I bet would probably only 2 coins in the top 100 are only proof of work anymore. So we definitely have a big green movement in cryptocurrency, and these narratives that are saying that it's super unclean and things like that are pretty much FUD. But obviously, once again, not a big fan of proof of work, but at least, you know, let's be, you know, factual about the things that we are talking about here. So that's pretty much my rundown of this everything I wanted to talk about regarding this video. As you know, as I was saying, debates are still open, and you know, finally this is done. See you later, guys.